And it told us that we had revenue of $10 billion in a certain segment. That's more than our entire company's revenues. AI doesn't replace humans. AI replaces humans that don't use AI. 3 different agents getting together and coming up with something you never expected. That one scares me more. When it does get to be 99%, you're no longer checking it. And
just after 8 in the morning on the 26th of June, 1974, a cashier in a supermarket in Troy, Ohio, scanned a packet of chewing gum. It was the first time in history a product was sold by pointing a machine at it and trusting the number that came back. And for the next 50 years, that was the deal we made with the machines on the shop floor and the warehouse floor. They told us the number, a human decided what to do about it. The scanner never had an opinion. It never surprised anyone. It did one thing the same way billions of times a day. This year, that deal quietly changed. The machine stopped just telling us the number. They started to decide and to act on it. Reorder the stock, move the robot, change the price on their own. So here is the question I want to put to my guest, a man who governs that shift for a living across a company of 10,000 people. When the tool stops advising and starts doing on a floor where a wrong move isn't a bad sentence, it's a physical thing. Who is accountable for what it does? I'm Amir Altaf. This is The Control Layer. Welcome back to The Control Layer, the show where I sit down with the people building and defending the systems the rest of us quietly depend upon. My guest today is Matt Ausman. He is the Chief Information Officer of Zebra Technologies. And if you've never heard of Zebra, you have almost certainly used them without knowing it. Their scanners, their mobile computers, their printers are the nervous system of the world's warehouses, its shop floors, its delivery rounds. When a parcel lands on your doorstep, a piece of Zebra kit tracked it most of the way there. Matt came up through General Electric's operating businesses, so he thinks like an operator, not a lab. And for the last 3 years, he has run generative AI governance across a company of nearly 10,000 people, which means when the theory about human oversight meets 10,000 humans at a deadline, Matt is the one who has to make it real. So this is a conversation about the moment AI stops being a tool you use and becomes an operator that acts, and about where the accountability goes when it does. And near the end, I'm going to ask Matt to do the thing every guest on this show has to do. Call it. Call it on the record with a prediction, with a date on it. Hi, Matt. How are you doing?
hey, I'm great, Amar. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
We really appreciate you joining the podcast today and being our guest. So why don't we start out with a little bit, set the scene for the audience and talk a little bit through about your role at Zebra and a little bit about your backstory. What brought you there?
I've been at Zebra for almost 5 years now and have gotten to watch the company as we've really embraced the AI movement that we're all in and that we all love talking about. So prior to that, though, I spent almost 20 years with General Electric in GE Capital, GE Power, and GE Healthcare. So I've got a broad set of experiences in many different industries. I got lucky to be in one company that let me work for a bank. a company that builds power turbines and services them, and then work with hospitals as well. So,
Oh, wow.
and
That
all
is
of
a
the
broad range of experiences there, Matt.
definitely was such a great opportunity to learn and understand there are definitely similarities, but there are differences. One simple example, when I worked for GE Power, to get a turbine fixed, you've got 40-foot cranes, they're lifting 100 tons to get the top of a turbine off. And then I went to a hospital to watch them do an MRI machine or a CT scanner, and it's two
Mhm.
guys will hand crank and a winch. So to take the top off, one happened to be two people and the other took a lot to do it. So
High
similarities.
tech and low tech in the same.
Yep. So
Fantastic. So why don't we start going into the meat of the episode? So and talk about barcodes versus AI agents, right?
yep.
So in sort of simple terms, what's the real difference between, the barcode scanner that has been on a warehouse or shop floor for Lord knows how long, for almost half a century, and
Yep.
the AI agents that are arriving now? And why does the fact that an agent can surprise you change anything?
Yeah. It's such an amazing time to be in technology right now. So when I think about the barcode scanner, it gave you an inventory list. That's the most simple way that I think about it. And that's the most pure and simple terms. You know what you have.
Hmm.
So now when I think about it though, there's more than barcode scanners, but as we've advanced in the world, you've got RFID, you've got printing labels, you've got machine vision cameras, but all of those are the environment that you have. They're environmental sensors. So your barcode is just one signal. Now your AI agents are actually doing something with it. The quantity of information that we have from an asset visibility perspective is changing, and the human mind and our deterministic models couldn't handle that type of data. So for me, the biggest difference, a barcode scanner is a single function. Do I have something? Our AI agents, in context of where we look at using them in a manufacturing space, are taking in just loads of information, and where I say an inventory list versus full asset visibility. So when you take all of those input sensors and put them into an AI agent, now you can have actions that they can act upon. So the human was always there doing the work, and now we've got an agent that's able to augment them. So I think that's where you say a human's not perfect. A human makes mistakes. These AI agents make mistakes as well. So I think it's a different context. One is, do I have a list of inventory? The other is, I've got this list of inventory, but I've got all these sensory signals. I've got 3 dimensions worth of data and information. And what do I do with it? The way that a human could if you supercharge them.
So does that make the agent more accurate or less accurate? Because obviously agents have AI models and they can be probabilistic rather than deterministic. And so, I mean, a human can be probabilistic
Yep.
most of the time. But so does that, so that challenge is there more concern with AI agents than there are with the average Joe with a barcode scanner?
There are definitely differences. So if you think of a human doing one single function, I think that
Hmm.
we can go in today's world and have an agent with, if it is coded right, with the right level of controls, that you can get a similar level of accuracy. What we're seeing though is we're not just trying to replicate what we have today, we're trying to create a future for tomorrow. And that's where you start having challenges. And that's where we are still working towards, what does future proofing that look like? So as an example, how many layers of agent controls do you put on? You start talking about multi-agent systems, just the way our brain works, right? You've got some, should I do this? You've got the good angel on one shoulder, the bad angel on the other, going back and forth. You could think of those in our head, right? They're going around. Should I do this? Oh, wait, am I going to take a step? Am I going to fall? Our brain is processing that. We've got to get to a point that we're coding agents or multi-agent systems that have a similar level of controls. And we may get to it a little bit later, but depending on the type of action you want to take, you may want a
Hmm.
different set of controls. Are you dispensing medicine where someone could, if it's done incorrectly, someone could die? Are you going and saying, did I put a package onto the wrong doorstep? No one dies, right? So what's the level of control that you need? How accurate do you need to be? Do you need to be 99.9999, which is what I really want in an aircraft engine when I'm flying over the Atlantic? Or are you okay with an 80% accuracy rate? So that's where I think it comes into play when we talk about what are we willing to accept from a control.
So it's really about the level of risk you're willing to accept, and ultimately, I guess is that level of inaccuracy better than a human?
Correct. Yeah. And in many places, it is better than a human, but humans still have an innate ability to look and see and understand. When you think about reading X-rays, right? They've
Mm-hmm.
shown that a machine can more accurately diagnose cancer than a human, or if something's in your lungs, because it's seen 100 million versions of that, and it can be more accurate. But it may not understand the context. You still want that doctor in the room. You still want the person that truly understands and has done this for 25 years, that experience for it, to really know. So are you going to base everything you do on just what the machine does? No, but can it look at what are the exceptions that kicked out? I'm not sure, right? I've got a 99% probability of this being right. I've got an 80% probability of it being right. It's one of the things we've seen recently. When we show that percentage results, it actually helps people. So when you give an answer, whether it's an AI agent or you're just chatting with an assistant, if it just gives you an answer, do we take it as correct or incorrect? What if we start saying, or we have AI say, I think this is 85% correct? That's a really interesting way to view it and give the human confidence. So back to the manufacturing floor, you've got people that have done this for you've got some people that are really long tenured. They know the procedures, they know the processes, and they may feel the AI is never going to be as smart as them. You've also got newly hired people. There's more turnover in frontline positions. They've done it for 2 weeks. They may trust it as this thing's always right. So how do you balance those two ends of the spectrum is a really interesting problem that we've got to solve for.
And in terms of moving it from the abstract and the theory into the tangible and the real, are there examples of where this has been deployed already?
Yeah. So I'll give you a couple of examples that we use in our own distribution facilities. So we've got a new agent that we use, and this is a lower, we're willing to take risk. It tells us the optimal way to pack a pallet. So if you think back however many years, a human looked and said, well, this box goes here and this box goes here. No different than when you pack a truck. We're kind of playing Tetris. I've moved many times in my life. Well, this goes here.
So have I, Matt.
Yep.
Many hours winded away playing that little game.
Yep, of what you can fit in. But that's what a machine is really good for. AI is great at that. If you've got this set of boxes and it can see it knows the dimensions, it can play Tetris way better than you or I can. So that's one that we went, and that's a great use of AI in the manufacturing floor. What's the optimal way to pack a pallet or pack a truck? So that's an example where we're using AI. That's a lower risk area. But we're also starting to look at where AI can detect, and this is with RFID coming in, did we put the pallet in the wrong location? You've got someone that's driving, they're putting a pallet away. They were told this is the rack row and bin that it goes to. You know what? They went one over and put it in the wrong place. With RFID, we can actually get close enough to tell you put that in the wrong place. That's not a human doing it. That's the machine. And it's actually double checking, right? Which gives us better accuracy. Because imagine 2 weeks later when someone tries to go pull the pallet, if it's in the wrong spot, they're not going to pull it. They might look to the left or right. What if you were one row over? So those are two examples where we've got AI that we're using right there in our distribution centers.
So I think you said publicly, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in the AI era, data quality decides the outcome. And so in that scenario, if the data's bad, does that mean that you won't be putting it in the correct place, but you'll be putting it in a place that's dangerous? So, does data quality really effectively become a safety control?
It can become a safety control. And this goes back to what we were talking about before. What are our use cases that we're really going after? If we put a pallet in the wrong place in our distribution center, that's not necessarily a safety issue. which is where we can start there. I've talked to peers that work in the medical space, and the first thing they're going to deploy AI is not going to be distribution of medicine, right? And making that decision. So the data, though, definitely makes a difference. If you have a sensor that's going off and saying that this pill container has aspirin, but in reality it's codeine, that's a very big But what are the levels of checks that you have? Are you using an RFID reader because you put a tag on the bottle? Or do you want to do a visual scan where you can do machine vision and read the label on that medicine? Do you also want to put in, do you know what the pill looks like when it comes out? So in an area where you've got safety, if you've got one sensor that goes off and says this is aspirin, but the label says codeine, the pill looks like codeine, the weight of that pill is tied to something else, you've got 4 different sensor signals. One of them is giving a wrong one. So that's a great example where you've got human in the loop to come and say, or human on the loop, I've got a 75% chance. In that example, you've got 4 sensors. One of the sensors tells me something that's wrong. 3 say it's something else. There's only a 75% chance this is right. I'm going to raise my hand and ask for help to go work through that. So when we get to the bad data, how much are you willing to accept? How many layers of control? How many sensory inputs at the front line do you feel like you need for accuracy? A human would do that, right? They would look at the bottle. They may know the pill because they've done it. And so in that example, a human is doing multiple layers of checks, and there are processes and procedures to do that. Are you giving it to the right person? Let me scan the wristband. Do you just take that, or do you also ask them what their name is? We do that when we go to the hospital here in the US. Every time I go into the room, they say, can you tell me they'll scan my wristband, but then they say, can you tell me your name and date of birth? Right? That's a check to make sure they're talking to the right person. So I think in this context, data definitely makes a difference, but this is where how many sensory inputs do you need? And that's where Zebra comes in, because we look at full asset visibility. How many different ways do you want to see it? And what are the different ways that you can look at what your true asset intelligence or asset visibility looks like?
That's really interesting, because often when people and enterprises think about deploying AI, the first go-to is let's get our data right. Let's get our data house in order, make sure the quality is high quality, is superior, there's governance and controls and data owners and whatnot, right? A whole slew of many, many years and many organizations worth of work to get to the point of purity in data. But what you all seem to be suggesting is that's only a part of the story. Actually having enough sensors and touch points in depth where you can validate the data as it's being captured or as it's being used, and then always have a human in the loop or on the loop, as you suggest, to deal with the exceptions. Is that, am I catching that right? Is that how you see it?
So in the I'll say the white collar world, we do spend a ton of time, and I will agree with you. Data quality is extremely important. But as you get closer to the front line, your data is not going to be perfect, right? Somebody's going to put something in the wrong place. You go to a retail store, a customer picks something up and puts it away and just puts it on a shelf somewhere else, right? A kid grabs something. You will have bad data as you get closer to the front line in that manufacturing world, in that healthcare world, anywhere else. So I think in the white collar back office, we do try to cleanse as much as we can, and we can do a little bit more of it. As you get closer to the front line, it's not going to be clean. So now you need to start looking at, how do you triangulate? How do you look at those different sensors and get multiple views of what is it? Is an RFID tag saying I'm not where I'm supposed to be? Is it a machine vision camera? Yeah, I think in the frontline world, the more data points that you have to triangulate and get accurate data is really important. I spent some time, I asked one of our leaders, what's going to win, machine vision or RFID? And he said, neither. It's a both. It's not an or, it's an and. The same way with a barcode scan or something like that. So the more sensors, the better data quality you can get.
That's really interesting, because you're right. There's an element of, I mean, some organizations, they try and solve the data problem, and so never really start their AI journey because they're still stuck in the loop on their data problem. But particularly in, as you say, organizations with more, where that is an impossibility to get the data 100% right because the
Yep.
environment is always changing.
Yep.
And so actually at some point you've just got to start and find how you're going to check that the data can be correct.
Yep. Exactly.
Cool. So why don't we move on to site development? So where is the industry, do you think, that the reassuring line of we augment, we don't replace, right? So, there's a, genuinely true, where is that genuinely true in the environments that you work in? Is that a comfortable question to answer or a hard question to answer? I mean, you can't go a day or a week without some news report about, the threat to workers and jobs and whatnot. And I mean, granted, a lot of that with knowledge work, but how do you see that playing out with folks on the front line?
Yep. So within the front line, there's always been hard reality of turnover, hiring, training, retraining. So I think in that world, this is making the ability for companies to train faster, hopefully make their employees' workload better, more manageable, and reduce some of the turnover that happens. But from a Zebra perspective overall, what we want is more hands. Our devices, our handhelds, our tablets, they are meant to be put in the hands of workers. So when we're selling our AI technology or even our hardware devices, the more hands, the better. So we actually believe that we want more hands. Can we find people that don't have devices today that are underserved and make them technology connected? Do you have 100% of your workforce in the manufacturing and or retail or other spaces that have a connected device? The answer is no. So our goal is actually to get everyone connected and ensure that there are more hands that are more efficient. So in the frontline workspace, I definitely think AI is really an additive and it should help companies enable their workforce to spend more time with their customers instead of doing some of the tasks that maybe aren't customer facing. When you get into the back office and white collar, that's one that there is some potential where there may be impacts. Some other major companies, I've heard them actually say there will be less back office, but we will have more front office jobs or frontline jobs, which kind of goes to that story of the closer you are to the customer, I think the better, the more secure and the better that you will be.
Yeah, no, it's a good way of looking at it, because the part that AI will struggle with, at least for a while, I suspect, is dealing with people. Understanding people, understanding our foibles, understanding our random emotion, and treating us with empathy in a way that hopefully a human can do, that a machine can't do. So I think that totally makes sense. Is that something you're starting to see, where, as you said, the people are freed up from some of the maybe the meaningless work they were doing and focusing more on the more meaningful?
Yeah, definitely. I'll give you an example again from one of our distribution centers. As we've got pallets coming in, you've got a person that needs to look at a sheet of paper. Here are the 50 things that came in on that pallet, and they're manually going, looking at it, scanning, checking. We're getting closer to, we can scan those with our handheld device, all of those sheets of paper. We've got a camera and or RFID, and it's just magically done. So you've got a 10-step process or a 20-step process that is machine verified. Now, is there a discrepancy? It's going to pull it up, and that's what the human works on. Do you really want to scan all 50 things in every pallet? Or do you want to say, oh, why were we missing 2? That's where the value add. This is broken. Let me follow that process. I've gone to many distribution centers for Zebra and other places. There is a stack of boxes that just hasn't been actioned yet because nobody's got the chance to look at the broken boxes, the returns, all of those exceptions. Imagine you've got people that are working on that instead of just scanning every single box come in. So there's an example where you can leverage AI to focus on the higher value tasks instead of the mundane task.
That makes total sense. I mean, and it leads into my next question in terms of bringing that human into the loop, that phrase. So, I mean, it's used often, but I guess the question is, how often is it real in the processes where AI agents are deployed? So is the human really deciding, or, are they just sticking their name on the diagram, or they're sticking their name on the sheet to say they've said it, even though they haven't really looked at it?
Yep. On that one, I'm actually going to dissect human in the loop and split it out into three parts. So the
Mm-hmm.
first one is what you said, human in the loop. Then you've got human on the loop, and then you've
Mm-hmm.
got human out of the loop. You've got three different ways to look at it. So with the human in the loop, that is where they may have a task that they need to do because they are part of the process. I've got this that I need to be the verification check no matter what. You always
Mm-hmm.
want that. So that is one. AI may do something, and this is where I think it's really important, or where we're seeing better uptick, giving the percent confidence of what AI did. So if I look at it and it's a 50% confidence level, I need to look really hard. If it's 99%, I may let it go by with a little less inspection. So that's human in the loop, where you're an individual contributor, you are doing work steps side by side with AI. Then you've got human on the loop. Think about that more of a manager. So I get exceptions, I get dashboards. We've got humans today that you've got people managers going and, hey, let me double check your work. Let me look at the exception. In every manufacturing floor, they've got a screen that shows output, that shows process capability that you're looking and managing. So that's the human on the loop. Whether it's a human or a digital worker, you've got your KPI metrics. You should be auditing. You should be getting those exceptions that we talked about that maybe kick up to the manager level. You could have that with a simple chat bot of, hey, I want to talk to a human, or I'm not comfortable answering it. Then you've got human out of the loop, which is really more of the autonomous. So AI is autonomous and it's running. We like that in deterministic areas. We've now got to accept what is the risk. And I think there's the human on the loop versus out of the loop. There are many things that happen in my organization that I know that I don't get anywhere near or don't touch, right? So we let things happen on their own. And are they lower risk? Have we built a model that is 99.9 good and we're okay with it? And it is one of those big exceptions. So I think when you separate them out, you really look at each of those use cases a little bit differently. But the biggest thing for me is showing the percentage value really makes a difference. We've got one of our agents and it will do a bunch of analysis and say, we think there's an 80% fit for this, a 90% fit. You could start with human in the loop, that they're looking at everyone. But just like you said, if it's 99% good, we're probably going to pass it through. And that's what scares me, though, is when it does get to be 99%, you're no longer checking it. And when it does fail, how do we make sure that humans catch it or can be accountable to the outcome or fixing it?
Yeah, I know exactly. I think I like to look at it from the analogy of what we do and have always done in organizations where we have people and we have processes and we have checks and balances because we know that people make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the AI world will change that. I think we'll still need processes. We'll still need checks and balances because AI will make mistakes. And so it just might make less mistakes. But I
Yep.
do think there is a real opportunity with which doesn't necessarily exist in the human world, which is you can record exactly what it did and
Yep.
why and when.
Yep.
Which is never going to happen in the human world.
Yep.
And so the opportunity for an organization to really drill back into this, the issue is really the process. The process is broken fundamentally, and we need to really look at how do we improve that and change that because we've got the data to show how this agent that's supposed to follow it
Yep.
has failed. So I think that's really interesting.
On that note, one of the things that I think that we've got to come or understand at a macro level, though, is assumption of risk. And it's an interesting one. So when you think of, I'll use self-driving cars as the analogy. In today's world, if I get in an accident, it's my fault, right? My insurance pays, I pay the deductible here in the US. What happens when it becomes a self-driving car? If there's an accident, who's paying for the insurance claim? If I bought your self-driving software, am I paying the deductible? So how do we assume that risk, right? If something is 99% good, who owns that 1% risk? What if it's 95%? Do we know what those percentages are? So I think about it from the way that we have our frontline workers, whether they're Are they the ones coding the AI assistant and the agent? Definitely not. If they miss when the agent gives them a wrong recommendation, who's responsible for that? Are they going to be reprimanded because they followed a procedure that AI gave them from an assistant and it was the wrong procedure? Whose fault is that? Are they going to turn to the CIO and IT and say, that's your fault? We're going to fire your agent? Is it the developer who developed it? So this assumption of risk when you get into probabilistic versus deterministic is one that I think we've got to figure out a little bit more at the macro level. Where does that assumption of risk go? If someone buys Zebra software, are we accountable for a mistake that happens? Just in, as I mentioned, in the self-driving car example.
And how do you see that playing out in the long run, particularly when it comes to AI? Do you think that, while there's this uncertainty, what we need is regulation to define that, to define the boundaries and the borders? Or do you think that actually companies will figure it out and they'll put things in, contractual agreements or whatever locally? Or do you think this is something that is too difficult a problem to fix?
I would love to punt this one and say it is too difficult of a problem. However, it's really at the heart of what we're going to get to over the next few years. I would expect to see some regulation around it. And as an example, in the self-driving car, you've got a regulated insurance industry, you've got safety. I could see governments coming in and outlining who has liability. In non-government regulated spaces, I see companies starting, I would expect them to start putting pressure on their vendors in the same way we spend a lot of time talking about guaranteed value versus is it token consumption or am I getting something for it? Do you also write in where's the risk? But you get into some very gray areas. Who's training the model? Is my local IT team doing something or is it one of our enterprise software vendors? So it gets really tough to assign where that blame is. Just like with a self-driving car, did you accidentally push the brake when you're driving? Because you did mention we can see and know everything that AI did. We've got every camera view, we've got everything, but at that point, is it the courts or lawsuits that decide this, or is there a framework to help us understand? When there is no pedal, no steering wheel, it's pretty easy to say where the liability lies. But are consumers going to bear that risk? And then at what point does the company need to step in if there is a flaw in software, which will happen? So,
yeah, no, absolutely. There'll be mistakes made. There'll be flaws, and I assume that'll keep the lawyers very much happy over the next decade or two. They'll be kept in business. But I do think there is a greater complexity, particularly when you deal with organizations who are international, who work across borders, where you have different regulations in different countries and different appetites for risk in different countries.
oh yeah,
And for a multinational being able to operate in that way, it really increases the risk level, I think, and the level of concern. Have you started to see any multinationals or companies that you've worked with be concerned by that, so that it puts them off, or do you think that actually the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow of the productivity they could gain is what they're drawn to?
It's a good question. We're so early in the kind of our AI journey. I think you're seeing some of it, and in Europe, for example, data privacy is looked at differently than other parts of the world, and I think there are questions on data sovereignty and are we willing to go as fast or not? So you've got some of your bleeding edge companies that are going to push the limits no matter what, and then you've got others that will say, I want to be at the leading edge, I want to be a fast follower, and I want to be a laggard. So I don't know if I've got any good examples where I can see. I know for us at Zebra, we're trying to live at the leading edge, so not all the way at the bleeding edge. So we are looking to ensure what is the data collected, and we will say no if something doesn't meet our compliance security requirements. So we're not willing to just live at the bleeding edge because of it.
So in that frame, have you ever seen an agent that's sort of gone off the rails, done something you hadn't expected, and then what happened when it did?
Yeah, so we're starting to build agents, and this will be in your back office. Nothing in our manufacturing centers. We're trying to be very safe, very guarded with what we do. But I did see one where we had an agent doing some automated reporting and analytics, and it told us that we had revenue of $10 billion in a certain segment. That's more than our entire company's revenue. So that's an easy one to spot. So
Yeah.
for this, it's the big hallucinations that I'm not worried about. We've generally got enough visibility within the big stuff, right? It's easy to tell when something goes haywire. It's the little things that bother me, right? When something is 95% correct, and in this one, I haven't seen it, but imagine if it doesn't detect or it puts a pallet one way over. Is that a big hallucination, or AI says go to the wrong location? Those are small if it's one row over versus it's just dropping it in the middle of a lane. We don't have automated forklifts. Those will be coming at some point. If it puts in the middle of the aisle, it's in the wrong spot. If it puts it somewhere close but not accurate, those are the ones that really worry me the most. It's the close that a human may not even catch it either. In the same way, we've got junior analysts that may feed data up. If they're off by 5%, somebody may not catch that, whether it's an AI agent or digital worker or a human. It goes back to what you talked about, your process controls, the people. Human in the loop has existed forever, whether it's a digital agent doing the work or a human doing the work. We've got levels of controls across our processes that are meant to catch it. The big stuff we catch well, the small stuff scares me.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because it's kind of the analogy of, I mean, this has happened in real life. You know the bank's been robbed, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you see the people break in and,
Yep.
take the money. But
Yep.
when you see a worm, a malware worm that takes off 0.00001 cent
Yep.
off every transaction, and you can go months and never
Yeah.
know that that's
Correct.
happened, and you've lost even more money. And that those are cases that have literally happened in the real world. So I totally get that. It's kind of the micro error that
Yep.
you don't know builds up over time, ends up being something major.
Yep.
I think there's the analogy, isn't there, of being a frog in water. And if you put a frog in boiling water, it'll jump out. But if you put them in water and you slowly turn up the heat, they'll stay there and die.
Yeah.
Very morbid, but
Yeah. No, it's a great example of the big stuff versus the small stuff, and that's where I'm trying to get more of what's our confidence level, and we need to audit, right? That's a big one. That's actually given us a way to work further in. So as an example, we had a process around our order entry that for years we've been working, hey, we can automate more, and we've gotten pockets, but there's been some resistance of the humans better, they understand it, they can do it. Well, we went and built an audit agent for the humans. You know what we found? The AI agent found all the mistakes that the human made. So now all of a sudden it's flipped the script a little bit. Well, if the agent is catching these mistakes, what if we let the agent do more? So it was an interesting way. We tried going head on to this problem for years. Now we went from the back and said, why don't we just want to help you? We're going to audit. We're going to catch the mistakes that the human made. But by doing that, it created the level of trust. And now I think we're going to be able to solve the big problem by working our way backwards, but trying to hit it head on. There was always resistance to do that. So there's an example where you can look at that audit, and are you trying to find, you can have an AI agent that's looking for that penny, the whole Office Space scenario, that movie where, like you said, they found all of those pennies and it added up to a really big number, but you can create agents that will go and audit that. So I think we'll start to do that to find the small things. The question is, how close to real time can you find it?
So the other side of the Office Space analogy, I love that movie. The other side of that analogy is the workers then broke the machine. They took the printer out and smashed it. So how do you feel, how did the people react to the agent that audited them? and found their mistakes? Did they take it as, okay, as a lesson to learn, I'm going to improve, and I'm gaining something from there? Or did they take it as, it's Big Brother, I'm now, master to the machine kind of
Yep.
perception? How do they feel, or how do they react?
I think it's different. So you've got some of the managers that will look and say, wow, this is actually really good, and let me help do more of it. I think at the employee level, one of the things that we talk about in Zebra is you've got to embrace AI. AI doesn't replace humans. AI replaces humans that don't use AI, right? If you're leveraging it, if you're getting better, if you are taking that approach that I'm going to use the tools, I'm going to reach out with ideas of ways that we can leverage AI to get better. I think the people that are doing that's the right view we want them to have. The skill set for the next 20 years, for the next however many. If you look at it and say, I'm scared and you're going to keep doing what you're doing and hope that nothing happens, I think that's the one that it's going to be tougher. So we've seen some examples of both, and it depends. Are you the worker or the manager as well?
Quick break. The control layer exists for one reason: to bring you the people actively shaping the world we'll all live in next. The architects, the operators, the decision makers whose calls you'll be living with 5 years from now. We publish their thinking every week on Substack, free. Every claim is sourced, every prediction goes on a tracker we revisit publicly when the test date comes up. If you want to be in the room when the future gets built, subscribe at link.arcava.ai/join. Now, back to the conversation. Mm-hmm. No, makes sense. So, but flipping that, I think there's a stat from Gartner where they think that 40% of agentic projects will be cancelled by 2027. So do you feel that, and partly the reason they're saying for that is either on the grounds of cost or unclear value or inadequate risk controls being put in place. So is that something that you're seeing yourself on the ground, or do you think that that is too gloomy, a too pessimistic perspective?
So I think I'm actually okay with that 40% cancellation rate. We're in such a bubble or a newness of technology that if you told me 100% of the projects were going to succeed, I would shake my head and say, then we're not taking enough risk. We're not pushing the limit. So I am actually okay with the 40% level. I think there are times here at Zebra that we probably need to cancel a few more of the projects or pilots. Some of them, if they're not used, they may fade away. So for me, 40% is okay. But I also there's another stat I think I saw from Gartner that said 15% of day-to-day work and decisions will be made autonomously through agentic AI. So that 60% that is still valid, is still good, is helping us get to, if you really think 15% of the decisions or day-to-day work decisions are being automated with AI, that's a tremendous win for business and for a company. And it's not going to get to 100%. So the way that we go, and if we kill a few projects along the way or some fail, I don't think it's bad. I think you've got to know, where I said earlier, how quickly can you find it? How quickly do you determine that a project isn't going to work, that it's not going to create value? And there are times we run projects on the hope, and that's okay. I want a sandbox incubator for parts of the teams to try things that, they might fail. And that's okay. For everyone that fails, it may lead to a different idea or help us understand why it failed. So whether it's we don't have the right controllership, the cost side is another one of them that I worry about. Your digital labor, and what does that cost? What are the increases that you get? We know in today's world, we can project what a human worker may get from compensation increases and raises. That's a variable question with software vendors on what that digital worker may cost in the future. I can't tell you what the major hypervisors or AI companies will charge us for tokens 5 years out. Is it double? Is it half? That's a scary one for in the manufacturing space. When you look at their cost per product and the way that they manage labor, that's a scary one when you don't have control over, or as much control over, what those digital labor costs are.
Oh, true. I mean, if there's such uncertainty. But then again, I guess the last 5 years we've lived through a period of tremendous uncertainty. When it comes to material costs, shipping costs, energy costs, it's all been variable and uncertain. And I think the benefit of what AI can bring, at least, is counterbalancing the negative of what some of the other impacts have been. But let's dial into sharing a bit of advice for some of the folks on the in the audience. So most governance assumes that there'll always be a human behind the action in some respect. You mentioned the human in the loop, on the loop, and out of the loop. So, but when you sit down and sort of look at governing agents for 10,000 people, was there one control that you went, well, that's the first one you've got to realize, or actually, was there a control that you realized straight off that didn't work actually from the get-go?
Yeah, it's one that we're grappling with right now. And I think about some of the citizen development happening. I look at the probabilistic nature. And for me, it's just our very systemic testing cycles. So in today's world, I'll look at our ERPs, CRMs, or even when we roll something out to our warehouse, we've got our list of test cases. We know what they are. We work, we test them. We know what the expected result is going to be. In the AI world, that kind of goes away. You can't test for an agent's going to come up with some weird hallucination. How do you catch it? What are the areas around it? So for me, the way that we test has got to change in the AI world. I want to use AI to write more test cases, but are we going to have AI write 1 million test cases and then validate those test cases? That's one half that I think is just not going to be feasible in the future, the more AI we put in. The other one tied to testing is your citizen development. We want many people to create agents. It's their day-to-day job. They're not IT professionals. This isn't what they do every day. They're going to write an agent to do, I have XYZ task that I need to go do every morning, whether it's in the manufacturing center or in an office. Are they going to robustly test that? No, that's unlikely. Should I give them as much of a platform to make it feel good? Yes. So in both of those scenarios, the testing is really what scares me the most to validate. But now this gets to, do I have the ability to audit no matter what, whether it's citizen development or enterprise apps? Do we have the ability to put other controls into the system where it can't touch our critical infrastructure or something else? So I think building the framework to just accept the fact that you can't test everything is a reality of the new world we're in.
Interesting, because I think that idea of validating and testing and even auditing is something that I think the AI sector is still trying to develop and build and struggle with. It's the next level of maturity beyond, I think, the joy of what is possible is the governance and controls and the practices which make an enterprise reliable, consistent, and budgetable.
Yep.
So it's interesting that we're going to be increasing our maturity in that space. So in terms of sort of the next question to focus on is around, and this is way outside the Office Space example. This goes directly to old school sci-fi. So Isaac Asimov, back in the day, it's a great sci-fi writer. He wrote laws for robots about what they can and cannot do, the 3 laws, and they governed how all robots would operate alongside humans. But almost every science fiction movie since has always had the rule follower following the outcome that nobody wanted, ending up killing all the operators.
Yep.
So you can pick any movie you like, from the last 50 years, and it would all be saying that. So are we governing today's AI operators with a rule book written for yesterday's assistants?
So first off, Asimov is my absolute favorite author. Foundation, number one. I loved iRobot. So the 3, this is my wheelhouse. I'm a sci-fi junkie. So I'm with you.
Brilliant.
The machines take over and control all of the humans. So with that being said, I think it's almost like any any law that we have for humans, it can be corrupted no different than agents. I think for me, where my worry is the speed, pace, and scale at which it can go and take over. And that's a lot of times what happens. It takes one agent. iRobot's a great example of one, like, I interpret the rule a little bit differently, but the speed at which it can react and do things. So it scares me a little bit of, is Skynet coming as well, of what happens. So I think the rule book is one that we've developed. You're spot on. We've developed a rule book for what humans can comprehend and our view of the world. I know we've got some really smart scientists out there and researchers that are looking at what the new rules are. And so I definitely think we've got to build some new rules. What are the new controls, new guardrails? And that's where there's talk in the industry of what do we need to do to make sure the human race stays safe. So yeah, that I don't think I've got the answers to it, but I do think.
I mean, if you did, then you'd be very wealthy, frankly.
Exactly.
It would be fantastic. But
Yep.
I think this episode is brought to you by Arcava. I'm Amir Altaf, the founder. The EU has confirmed it. Every high-risk AI system operating in the EU must be auditable, accountable, and reconstructable on demand by December 2027. That's 18 months. Less if you count procurement. Arcava turns sovereign AI into outcomes your board can measure and builds them on a foundation regulators will recognize. UK built, auditable by default, engaged by the outcome. If you're standing up an AI program that has to be defensible by 2027, start now. Contact us at arcava.ai. But narrowing the focus down to the enterprise leader who may be wanting to foray into using AI agents, their shareholders are on it. Then why aren't you using AI? Why aren't you using AI?
Yep.
Fine, we're going to use AI.
Yep.
But are concerned about the impacts of it. Is should their rule book change from the way they currently run their business because they're putting AI in place? And if it should change, how should it change?
Yeah. So I think the number one thing you've got to do, you've got to have a level of governance and you've got to have an understanding of your personal level of risk. One of the things that I've talked about before is you need to know where you want to be on the adoption curve. Do you want to be at the bleeding edge, the leading edge, or where you are? What is your risk tolerance? You can't define your rule book until you've defined that. It may change as you go along, but you have got to make that decision and understand with your board, with your shareholders, what's the level of risk that you're willing to take. So that's got to be the number one thing that you've got to define. Once you've put yourself once you've defined that strategy, now you can go and say, these are the level of controls that we're willing to put in. I've got a peer at a company who said, we will not allow an agent to talk directly to a customer, whether it's via email or chat or something else. They've got a really small customer set. And if you make one mistake with a customer, it's got a material impact. Someone like Zebra, we have tens of thousands of customers. It's a different view of risk. So that's an example where they know their strategy, they know their customer base, they know their risk level. And based upon that, I think you go and approach it. So a company like that might say, we've got very defined rules. We are not going to get productivity in our customer call center or in certain areas. And that's okay because we will never let an agent talk directly to a customer. Others may go, so I think really that's more of a strategic question. Once you define it, then you can figure how much do you need to ratchet the playbook down of, are you letting full autonomous back to, do you want in the loop, on the loop, out of the loop?
That makes sense. I guess though, have you ever had to go and run for the power socket and unplug it to find the off switch? No, don't put it.
I was at a CISO internet security conference a couple weeks ago, and I got freaked out by one of the presenters saying within, minutes of vulnerabilities coming out and available that you can be attacked. that's what keeps me up at night is the milliseconds, right? Or the transactions that can be booked in your general ledger. So we have not had to go run for the power plug. I am glad we haven't, but it keeps me up at night. But what are the guardrails you need? How quickly do you find it, right? Is it the one penny every day, 1,000 times a day that gets taken, or we'll find the big $10 million loss that goes out? So,
So which do you think is the worst, the thing to worry about more then? So is it sort of the one agent that's making a decision within your organization? Or do you think it's the agent that has to interact with your supplier's agent, that has to interact with your carrier's agent, and somehow they produce an outcome that nobody expected, nobody thought about? So which do you think, which keeps you up more?
I would have to say it's the latter. The impact with our customers, suppliers, and partners is different than within the four walls. One agent you can control a little bit better. It's almost where you've got theft within a company. If you two people you can control. Five trying to do collusion, you can't stop it, right? There aren't enough controls put in place for the example of three different agents getting together and coming up with something you never expected is much, much harder to control, spot, and identify. So that one scares me more.
No, totally. I totally agree with that. I think that where that's the next level in the AI journey and how to create agent. If there's going to be hundreds of thousands, millions of agents, probably already are without anyone realizing, how do you get them all to operate across boundaries safely with the right level of auditability? So I just kind of going back to that decision making, that risk framework between autonomous and human. Is there a particular line that you would draw deliberately between letting a machine decide on its own versus keeping a human as the person who's the principal making the decision?
Yeah, I think for me that goes to the use case. We allow a lot of things. This is very deterministic, but our alarm clock. You let your alarm, you set it and you don't worry about it. You don't watch it. I think we'll start to find what are the transactions that we build trust in. And when you can get to a sense of comfort of that the models are tuned enough that it interacts in a way that we can feel that much higher level of trust. So I think it's going to be very use case dependent. The more safety or the more human impact, customer impact, the more layers of controls we'll put on it. But I think that control layer is really a part of it as well. I don't think anything will operate without any level of control on top of it.
That makes sense. I think going back to something you said at the beginning around having that level of confidence in measures in place to assess how well it's operating, confidence in any kind of process gives you more willingness to let it carry on. But having that visibility also gives you that confidence to know when it's not gone right. So it's interesting. So now we've gotten to the part of the podcast with every guest that we ask them to look into their crystal ball and make a prediction. Now, I won't come back round to your house and say you got this wrong. Why? Right? So don't worry. But is there something that you can look into and think and predict about what's going to happen with the use of AI agent? And is there a particular signal that we should look out for, a particular occurrence to say it's coming true?
Yeah, for me, it really comes to, it's the personal agent, whether you're working in a manufacturing floor or just in your home life. It's easy to say within 10 years you'll have one, but I think we will all have a digital twin of ourselves at some point. And it goes back to the view of how many sensors, what are the signals coming in? I'm going to have something that's likely recording everything that I see, hears what I hear, consumes all of my emails, and is able to respond and do, I don't want to say all of my life, but the mundane tasks and work. And am I going to delegate myself to do meetings or my digital self? I think within 10 years, we're going to see some form of that where you will say, what do I do with my time now? Right? If I'm not answering emails, I'm going to think something or just go respond to my brother. He texted me about something. Just you have the back and forth discussion and tell me what's happening. Are we meeting up or are we doing it? The question is, if he's got an agent on the other side and they're just talking and I'm getting the summary, what does that really mean? What does our life become? So back to, I'm a big sci-fi guy, and what does it look like 10 years from now? But if we've all got a digital assistant or a digital twin of ourselves that consumes X amount of signals, sensory information, what do we do then? So that's kind of my prediction is within the next 10 years, we'll have our own digital assistants. And you said, what does it mean to do it? When do we stop interacting with humans as much? And when are we interacting with that digital assistant? Which scares me a little bit of what does life really look like in that world?
No, totally. Because, I heard a philosopher once say the meaning of life is to live it. And living it through an AI agent doesn't feel like I'm the one living.
Yeah.
So interesting. So, right. So this is the final question. And the final question isn't for you. So the final question is, what one question do you think should I ask the next leader I interview around either AI, governance? What do you think I should ask them? Pass it on.
That's a good one. How are you driving change management and adoption within your workers? We didn't really talk about that in our discussion of the people in the front line of the warehouse or in the hospital. How do they think of it? You brought it up a little bit when AI is coming back and auditing them and what was their feeling on it. So I think that's one that I spend more time thinking about change management than I almost do the solution today. So how do we get people to adopt and use and accept AI and technology is one that I think that's a great question for the next person.
Perfect. Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for a really engaging and interesting discussion. I think it's fascinating to hear your perspective and your experiences. So cheers.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Amir. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic. Here's where I land. For 50 years, the machine on the floor did what it was told, and it answered for nothing. Now it decides. And the accountability for that decision does not disappear the moment a human steps back from it. It just goes looking for an owner. You can automate the decision. You cannot automate the accountability for it. That is a sentence I want you to leave with. We heard Matt Ausman, Chief Information Officer of Zebra Technologies. The episode is called When the Tool Starts Deciding, and the full written companion to it, with every source and the citations, is on the control layer. The link's in the show notes. And if you are a CIO, a CISO, a head of operations, or just anyone who's about to put an agent somewhere, a mistake has a real consequence. I want to hear from you. What do you think I got right? What do you think we missed? Leave a comment on the Substack, on the YouTube channel. If this made you think, please subscribe. If it made you a little uncomfortable about the agent you have just signed off, haha, that's kind of the point. I'm Amir Altaf. This is the Control Layer. Stay informed. Stay sovereign. I'll see you next time.